What is going on YouTube? Welcome to a 1v1 game in between Artie and kauP on French Pass. Spawning on the left side is Artie playing as the French in blue, and to the right side we will have the Abbasids in the hands of kauP playing in red. Artie opening up with a second scout right away, whereas on the other side it looks like we're seeing no additional scout being added at the beginning by kauP. So, French Pass over here, a map that has many different ways that could be played. You could go quite aggressive, try to control the sacred sites and just force your opponent to make a move. You could wall up and boom. But the interesting thing is going to be how kauP is going to utilize the Abbasids over here, because this is not a civilization that you generally associate with this map very often. They have their own power plays, so they can go for multiple town center booms. Technically, the trade boom is there as well as an option. Whereas on the other side, French is just a generally good civilization on any map out here, but usually when you look at players picking civilizations for this map, you see them prioritizing stuff like Holy Roman Empire, prioritizing stuff like Chinese, simply because those have extremely powerful economies, and that is, I think, a vital part of the gameplay on French Pass. For those of you that don't know the map, we do have two small gold mines to start with for each player, but the majority of the gold is in the middle over here, surrounded by two ridges. Both sacred sites are in the middle as well. So you will have to fight for the gold in the middle, but more importantly, you will have to fight for the sacred sites in the middle, because if one player controls both, he's going to trigger the sacred site countdown, and in 10 minutes time, his opponent would lose the game to that. Looks like two wolves were triggered by kauP over here. He's going to take them down with the town center. Considering that there is no Rus on the battlefield, it really doesn't matter whether or not you kill the wolves. The only reason why it's actually helpful is because this way your villagers won't bump into them later on, so at least a level of annoyance is removed from the game by triggering the wolves and then bringing them back to the town center, because the town center will get rid of them, and this way your villagers are a tiny bit safer. Up north, we do have Artie playing the standard French opening over here. Only 2 on gold for him, and he's already going for an extra lumber camp. He managed to collect quite a lot of sheep, and this is exactly what you would expect from a player adding an extra scout. That's the main purpose of you adding that extra scout out there. You want to make sure that you can bring in some extra herdables. So you see, he's got at least like 6 more, aside from the carcasses, that he has underneath his town center, whereas for kauP, he's pretty low on the sheep department. Now, this is not something that kauP directly has to worry about, because the Abbasids do have a berry gathering bonus, and considering that this map doesn't feature that much aggression early on, you could really just justify moving out for these berries, and it's not really something that would be dangerous at this point for kauP. He's going up to Feudal Age with the economy wing, as you would expect. On the other side, standard French opening with the School of Cavalry as well. You will have 3 villagers building it, although one of them now gets retasked on the sheep. So it turns out that Artie isn't really rushing that Feudal Age, only 2 villagers building it. He's going to take his time going up. Whereas on the other side, kauP, of course, he has a steady 2-minute wait on the economy wing to be finished. That's part of the reason why Artie doesn't have to rush his own landmark. He knows exactly that his opponent can't rush Feudal Age, so it's going to take quite a lot of time for the Abbasids to reach Feudal. Might as well take my time building my own landmark as well, and spend the villagers on gathering resources instead. Looking at kauP, he is mining stone with 5 villagers, so there is going to be at least 1 extra town center being added by him, potentially even stone walls. That's always an option as well. But with 5 on stone, I would suspect an extra town center is part of the equation right now, especially for the Abbasids. Whereas on the other side, Artie is not going for any villagers on stone. Makes me wonder if he wants to play a little more aggressive than usual. Looking at him, he's now building that School of Cavalry, only 1 villager, so really, he's taking his time going up to Feudal Age. If he wanted to go aggressive, he would have his window. He could just send out a couple of knights after rushing up that landmark with like 4 or 5 vills and start harassing the opponent, but it looks like that's not something that he wants to do. He's just content to go up to Feudal Age quite slowly. In fact, he might actually be slower to Feudal Age than his counterpart on the right side, kauP, almost in Feudal Age in 15 seconds, whereas on the other side, as you see, Artie is taking his time building that landmark, now going for the stone. Now, one of the advantages that you have building that landmark with only 1 villager is that, as I said, you have a lot more villager time spent on gathering resources, so that's definitely a positive. Although you have to keep in mind that the Abbasids don't have to spend a single second when it comes to aging up. All they have to do is build the House of Wisdom. So, as much as for the Abbasids, it's a drawback that it takes 2 minutes to age up to the next stage and you can't accelerate that. There is also some positives with this. The positive is that you don't have to spend villagers on aging up. You have to make the House of Wisdom once, but it's not something that takes a lot of time, and you only have to do it once, as compared to other civilizations having to build landmarks in every age with multiple villagers. So there is definitely some positives in the House of Wisdom mechanic, but currently, this time, 2 minutes is just way too long for the Abbasids, simply because, as you see, other civilizations could rush up their landmarks so fast and just utilize the power spikes they have against you. Don Artie up to Feudal Age right now. It looks like there is no Knight coming out whatsoever. He doesn't have a mill either, so Professional Scouts is probably not part of the plan right now, but he's moving up with the Villager. This Villager, on the other hand, might get spotted by kauP over here. Indeed, he sees the Villager, and I wonder where this Villager is going. He might be trying to just wall his opponent in here, and then go for the Sacred Sites. That's always an option. He's on stone, but he's only on stone with 2 villagers, so it's very possible that this is not for a town center, but for stone walls. And as you see, the scout of kauP is going to jump on that villager. kauP is going to lose the sheep that was trailing that scout, but with some animation canceling, and given how far away this villager is from the town center of Don Artie, there is a legitimate risk of this villager being lost, although he's getting closer and closer to the base of Don Artie. So, in all certainty, he's going to be able to save this villager out here, but whatever his plan was, kauP is going to be able to deny this, and that's why having that extra scout here is immensely helpful. A scout that will be non-existent in a matter of seconds, because the town center is going to snipe it down. So, ultimately, kauP was able to slow down those walls, but he's not going to be able to stop them, because there is now 2 villagers being pulled. There's a sneaky villager for kauP moving to the right side. Makes me wonder if he wants to do the exact same thing. Pull off this crossing over here, and indeed that's the plan. He's coming in with the stone walls. There's a second town center already up for him. He's got the berries going as well, and wheelbarrow is on the way. Whereas on the other side, for now it's only 1 town center for Don Artie, and he's on the hunt with the mill. No professional scouts, no survival techniques, not even a single economy upgrade, in fact, coming in for him. And it looks like we only have 1 villager moving forward now. The one that was low HP was brought back by Don Artie. He's likely going to start voting this off, or maybe even sneak into this corner. It's possible that we would see some sort of forward coming in here, because a forward here would actually be quite devastating against kauP. kaup's got one of the gold mines quite exposed, and also some hunt, the stone, but it looks like Don Artie wants to play a more conservative game and just go for the stone walls. So both players will be able to stonewall off the opponent on one side, but of course the other one will remain open. So there is still some more walling to be done, and it looks like we're going to have the guild hall coming in for Don Artie. I wasn't looking at his resources when he was going up to Feudal Age, but it looks like this is basically a fast castle build for him. As I said, the idea behind building that school of cavalry with only 1 villager is that you gather more resources because you can send your villagers to other resources instead of building that landmark. And because you gather more resources over that certain period of time, you will have a pretty easy time going into Castle Age here, and that's exactly what we're seeing. The guild hall, of course, is going to start trickling in those resources for you the moment you hit Castle Age, so the sooner you get this up, the more you can benefit from the guild hall, especially early on. Those extra resources could be immensely helpful. Meanwhile, on the right side, we do have some interesting looking palisade walls over here. I think the idea here for kauP is that he's seeing this villager out here, and wait a minute! Wait a minute, what happened to that boar? Did Don Artie misclick that boar? What's happening here? Looks like the boar is aggroed by the scout, but for whatever reason it's also fighting the villager. I have seen a report about this one, that if a scout aggroes a boar, it could also attack the villager nearby. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I assume that the boar doesn't distinguish between whoever attacked it and just starts to go crazy and starts killing whoever is nearby, but it looks like Don Artie will be able to pull the villager to the right side of the walls, and this way save the vill. The boar de-aggroes as well, and now with some animation cancelling micro, Don Artie is in a position to potentially take down that scout as well from kauP. Looking at Don Artie, he's gonna have the walls up, and what's more important is that there is even a villager out here that could cause further harm, and that's the reason why you're seeing these palisades come up over here. The idea is that you want to block the enemy from walling this crossing. Meanwhile, up north, you do have stone walls up here, and Don Artie wanted to send a couple of knights this way, but he's going to bump into that stone wall, so that's not going to be a possibility anymore for him. Meanwhile, you do have 2 town centers, with a 3rd one coming in already for kauP. On the other side, for Don Artie, he's still on stone, so an additional town center is still an option. But as it seems, he's just going for the stone walls for the time being, although he's got 450 stone. So he might even think about a keep at some point. Maybe making a keep at the front here to secure a sacred site could be big, because it's not like his opponent has a big army. So making a keep out there, and there it is. kauP is going to trigger the boar, and I'm curious to see how this works, because as you see, the boar seems to be retargeting towards other units. I'm not sure if this is an intended behavior or what. I can 100% see this one being intended, and basically the board working in a way that is just going to attack whoever is nearby. But kauP triggered that board to discourage Donati from fighting this, because kauP's scout is much lower in HP. Now the villager is going to have to make a run for it, though, because Donati's scout here is definitely doing a lot of harassment, and kauP having a low HP on that scout hurts so much over here, because you see, he can't fight that scout right now, but it also means that the villager has to start running back. A couple of hits will be delivered by kauP scout over here on Don Artie's. One Don Artie turns back, gets one hit going, a second hit could come in after the animation cancel, and indeed, kauP is going to lose that scout. And as it seems, Don Artie is going to start stonewalling the middle, so he's going to have the entire middle walled off, and there is already a monk moving out, so he's going to start going for that sacred site countdown. Meanwhile, on the right side, we're seeing markets come up from kauP. kauP is still in feudal age as we speak, as another villager was sent out. I assume the idea was to stonewall this, and indeed it is, but it's just a little too late now. There's a scout nearby, there's a knight nearby. The reality is that kauP isn't going to be able to wall this off here, and his base will remain open for the foreseeable future, although we do have some spearmen coming out here. Abbasid spearmen, of course, quite powerful once you get all the upgrades on them. They will take down the scout, and there's a chance they could take down the knight as well. They do have the hardened upgrade on them, but it looks like they will ignore the knight for a brief moment after that turnaround and scare away the knight for the time being. There's also an opening here, so kauP is going to try and use that window to try and kill this villager. You see, Don Artie is actually rushing up those wall segments, so no more spearmen can pass, but there is still an opening here, and that could allow those spearmen to kill the monk. That's a bit of a sloppiness here for Don Artie. For whatever reason, the walls here weren't finished, and now you see a tower come up as well for kauP. He knows exactly that he can't let his opponent start the sacred site countdown over here, because as you see, there is one sacred site already captured. The villager is now being pulled, and you see the cross wall segment once again being dropped by kauP. He dropped this segment of wall over here to deny the walling from Don Artie, and this way keep this one open. More villagers are being pulled to make that tower happen. On the right side, there's one knight over here lurking for whoever is coming this way from kauP. But for now, kauP's attention is focused in the middle part. Looks like there is no answer from Don Artie to those spearmen just yet. He's coming up with archer ranges and popping out some arbaletria, somewhat surprisingly, and some mangonels. Of course, the arbaletria won't perform that well against the spearmen, but with mangonel support, that could be pretty scary, because the arbaletria would pick off knights that kauP would make to deal with the mangonels. And it looks like kauP is not even going up to Castle Age with the culture wing. You see him going up with the trade wing, going for Spice Road. So he's going to have a pretty massive boom over here. He already has 3 town centers, and he's already coming out with some trade as well. These traders bringing back 171 gold apiece, and that's before the upgrade comes in. Mosque comes out for kauP. He's going for the sacred site himself. Looking at the ecos for a short moment, 49 for Don Artie, 77 for kauP. So kauP's got a pretty considerable eco lead here. You see it's 1,000 food per minute as opposed to 200. Part of the reason why is because, of course, kauP has quite a lot of berries working for him. He tried to get some stone walls up here, and it looks like he's got the foundations laid, so the knight can't cross. There is one villager nearby that's trying to stop this, and there is a mangonel coming out now. I didn't see the mangonel come out. All I saw was the villager getting killed, and this could actually open up this wall segment very, very easily. Villagers are being pulled as well. You could actually try getting some more HP on those walls before the mangonel comes in. It looks like Don Artie, for the time being, is retreating. And now kauP is in a position to capture that sacred site. Meanwhile, for Don Artie, he's got 2 relics working for him as we speak. He managed to pick 2 of them up from here. There is 2 more to be captured. So there is a 3rd one for either of these players. They're already being brought in. A stonewall tower is now being made, but of course with the mangonel being able to arc over walls with its shots, it's quite easy to kill those villagers unless the mangonel isn't setting up. Mangonel now sets up. Villagers will be split away, and I think what you want to do is rush up on top of the wall, because that way you actually get a reduction from damage. Indeed, that's exactly what kauP is doing, trying to rush on top of the wall. The villagers are still low HP though, so the mangonels will be able to finish them off, but had he started with that, he would have taken way less damage and probably would have finished that tower. If that tower goes up, it would have been very difficult for Artie to break through this one. Now you're going to see some mangonels come out as well for kauP. Defensive tower is up with 5 spearmen garrisoned inside. It's going to take down a couple of arbaletrier, but there is no spring golden placements whatsoever, so it's not something that's going to withstand a lot of bombardment from mangonels for a sustained amount of time. In the middle, Artie is coming up with a keep as well, and with the influence radius of the keep reducing the cost of cavalry from stables, that could be immensely powerful here in the middle, because you could reinforce the battle from stables here. Once again, you don't want to just pull your villagers on that tower and make it from behind. You want to rush up on top of the walls, so you take way less damage from the mangonels as you are building that tower. As things stand, it's 119 population against 80, 57 eco versus 95, so kauP's eco is light years ahead compared to Artie's one. But this army from Artie is a little concerning, I think, for kauP. If you look at kauP, he's got Spearmen and the Mangonel only. A couple of Springalds would be immensely helpful, and with the Abbasids being able to build them on the battlefield, that would just help so much. Of course, the Springalds wouldn't be able to take down the Mangonels from across the wall. But once the walls are broken through, those Springalds would snipe down the Mangonels, keeping your Spearmen alive. So you could really justify going for a couple of Springalds, simply because I don't think he can protect these walls right now. Like, there is 1.5 mangonels ready for him right now, as opposed to 4. But if he can't protect the walls, might as well start going for Springalds and prepare for the battle after the walls have been broken through. On the left side, you got some more stone walls reinforcing this side, and Artie is also getting a palisade up on the north to make sure that his opponent can't just launch a counterattack that way. And kauP is also aging up to Imperial, so you see, there is quite a lot of benefits here from that trade and that triple town center boom. He's at 110 eco as opposed to his opponent being at 61 only, so almost double the economy now. Artie is still playing at 1 town center, but he's got 3 relics, so that helps compensate a tiny bit. As opposed to kauP, who hasn't picked up a single relic under his control right now. Stone walls once again being built in the middle, and the mangonels will again try to snipe down the villagers over here. All the foundations have been placed, so there is no way for units to break through this one. Unless the mangonels can break through these walls, Artie isn't going to be able to get through this one. Another stone wall is being placed, as the villagers should once again jump on top of the wall to avoid getting slaughtered by the mangonel fire. A couple of springalds also being added by Artie. He's got a never-ending flood of siege weapons coming in, and there's basically no army behind this. Just trebuchets, just springalds, and a couple of mangonels. Now you see the crossbows on top of the walls. Obviously, you take reduced amount of damage from siege weapons, but it doesn't mean that you will survive a volley of 4 mangonels and also some springald fire. Looks like the walls will once again be broken through. Still not a springald for kauP. Looks like he's bringing in some relics. Obviously, these walls are also making this a little more difficult for him, because you see that he has to reinforce to this narrow gap, and now he's realizing that he's breaking these walls, so he's got a little more space to work with. Walls are broken through, and we've got some arbaletrier coming in, but most of the army here for Artie is just siege. 4 springalds, 4 mangonels, a counterweight trebuchet, 1 knight, and 6 arbaletrier. Up north, villagers moving out potentially for the hunt over here, as Artie has a pretty underwhelming eco compared to his opponent, but if you look at the military population, that's a little more convincing, whereas for kauP, he's got a great eco, but his army is just subpar at this point. 11 spearmen, 7 men-at-arms, 2 mangonels. That's kind of mediocre, and it looks like kauP is going to give up on the middle. Artie is pulling the villagers to make the walls happen once again, and he's going to neutralize the sacred site, and in all certainty capture that, so he would actually trigger the sacred site countdown. Behind this, kauP's got the trade going. 234 gold per trip is nothing to be ashamed of, and you see he's got 2,000 gold per minute. Whereas for Artie, his eco is struggling big time. You see, he's at -0 food per minute. -0 stone as well. His food eco isn't spectacular, although you have to keep something in mind. Most of his units, he's making siege. So he really doesn't need that much food at this point. Wood and gold is what he needs. And the fact that he's got 3 relics working for him, plus 1 sacred site, soon to be 2, is going to give him a very nice trickle of gold. That's 500 gold per minute, so it's going to make it a little easier to reinforce the battlefield with more siege weapons. And as I said, the thing here is that mangonels can shoot over walls, whereas the springalds won't be able to shoot unless they have a clear line of sight on that mangonel. So it's difficult for kauP to respond to this. It looks like we're seeing some more palisade walls being built over here. Sacred Site victory now triggered. It was at like 19 minutes 40 seconds, so okay, now it's triggered. I thought it was triggered like 10 seconds ago, but nope, it was triggered at 1951 or so. So in 10 minutes of time, kauP is going to lose the game if he's unable to capture a Sacred Site. There's a second rally coming in as well for kauP. He's got an absolute juggernaut eco. So if he can get his army back on track, Donati stands no chance. Because the reality is that kauP is sitting on tons of resources, so what he's really lacking is production. He's rushing up a Madrasa as we speak, some bombards are moving in. And remember, Donati is in Castle Age, so now we have a technology advantage for kauP. He could get roller shredder triggers for his springboards for extra range. He could get culverins going, he could get bombards going, and the Imperial Age power spike is massive because the bombards can just break through walls a lot faster than anything in Castle Age. So that's something that you have to respect. The trade is absolutely insane here for kauP. You see, kauP's got basically 7 gold miners, all of them over here, and he's getting a pretty good trade going. Now, he needs this trade because, remember, all the big gold mines are in the middle. So, since he doesn't have control over this, he would run out of gold really fast. This is the last gold mine that he has access to on his side of the map, and that is almost depleted. It's halfway consumed already. Trebuchet is knocking through these stone walls over here. kauP doesn't seem too concerned. He is grabbing some more mangonels, some more bombards. The bombard could actually find a very nice angle here. You got that hilltop here. It's partially blocked by that poor sheep. But if you could actually get that bombard in here, you might have a line of sight on these. And that could be massive. Because raining down death and destruction from this hilltop could be immensely helpful. Alternatively, kauP, in theory, has the chance to break through on the south. But Donati is going to try and prevent that with a third layer of stone walls coming in. Meanwhile, look at this. Donati's got 9 mangonels on the left side, 7 springboards, 1 mangonel, 2 trebuchets on the right. He basically has no legitimate army. It's just 4 siege. He's got like, what, 1 knight, 7 arbaletiers. It's just something to pick off if there is like 2 or 3 knights coming in. If kauP had like 15 knights jumping on this army, Donati would just get absolutely annihilated. Now, we got the camel going here, which is going to have the camel unease buff, which will make it much more difficult for Donati's knights to engage, although one thing that kauP doesn't know is that Donati has absolutely no knights on the battlefield, so it's not something that's going to be very relevant. But the camel support could be big as well, having an extra armor to your infantry, and you see that right now bootcamp is coming in. Bootcamp giving 15% extra health to your infantry as well could be immensely valuable. You see improved processing is also queued up as well. I think, given the fact that you are going to have to take a fight here at some point, I would say camel support could actually make a little more sense to be prioritized over improved processing. But kauP thinks otherwise. He's knocking his way through these walls right now, but you gotta be careful because those mangonels, especially if they get over here, that's 12 mangonels, man. If those mangonels get over here, it's gonna be impossible to break through this one with infantry, and cavalry would just be so much more useful here. Obviously, you would still have the problem of lack of mobility, but the mangonels will absolutely annihilate the infantry. Now, the problem right now for Donati is that he's got no mangonels nearby, and kauP could jump on this army. In fact, I'm somewhat surprised that he's not doing that, because while the springboards are definitely scary, and there is some arbaletiers as well, he could easily overrun this force, and he has been waiting for a tiny bit of time, and now you see the mangonels rolling in. Once those mangonels are on the battlefield, it's gonna be impossible for kauP to push this one. He's trying to open up the walls a little bit more, so he's got some time, but really, right now he's buying time for Donati to bring the mangonels up. And now you got, what is that, 12 mangonels? 11 mangonels raining down death and destruction, and you just can't run into that mangonel fire. There's no way to avoid it when you have 11 mangonels firing upon you, especially when you run into narrow choke points like this one. The infantry is getting just absolutely slaughtered. Men-at-Arms already down in HP, and there's 3 more mangonels setting up. You see, they have no chance against that much firepower. In the end, it's 80 kills for Donati and 18 losses only. Absolutely massacred was the army of kauP here. Oh boy. That is a grand total of 16 mangonels. And let's not forget the fact that we have a Sacred Site countdown going on that is about to reach the 5-minute mark in just 30 seconds. So this is going to make it very difficult for kauP to launch a counterattack. Okay, he's getting some stables up, so he's going to think about cavalry now. Down south, he's got limited amount of chances to break through. There is 4 layers of stone walls up here, with keeps also coming in. It's difficult to break through here, especially because the first layer of walls doesn't have any forests nearby. When you have forests nearby, you always have to respect the fact that it is possible to chop down some of the trees and just sort of run past the walls. So technically, if kauP opened this section up, he could just send a villager, chop down some trees here, and get through. Obviously, if Donati notices that, he can react appropriately, but there is always that window. And it looks like Donati is just going to rebuild his walls over here. For kauP, this is going to be a difficult push. I think he needs to delete this wall section because he needs a good angle to shoot these walls. Right now, he doesn't have a good angle. He's deleting the palisades, but this stone wall is what's causing problems. Because the only way that he can shoot these walls is from, like, here. Because you don't have a line of sight from here, and you have this area blocked. So now that he's opening that up, there's a window for him to break through here, but it looks like he is not going for the walls just yet, coming up with the tower. He's going to try and break through now. About to set the bombards up. This is something that Don Artie sees, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, he sees the bombard, so he knows exactly what he's up against. One thing it doesn't know about is that there is an increasing amount of lancers now coming in. Not a ton, though. In fact, looking at kauP, he's got 193 population, but only 57 army because he's got so many villagers. Meanwhile, if you compare this to Don Artie, he's got only 91 eco. He's still in Castle Age, by the way, but he's got 108 army. Now, in reality, that's actually less units, and it's more about the military population that's consumed by these mangonels. And now you see kauP is coming in with the bombards. He wants to go for the landmarks in all certainty. He's realizing that he's got 3.5 minutes left, so it's unlikely that he can take these sacred sites with so much siege nearby. But remember, this siege has limited amount of mobility, so it's very difficult for Don Artie to adjust to a push like this. There's some stone walls coming in here, Don Artie trying to rush them up, but it looks like this one is going to be denied, and now a force of lancers could come in any moment. Looking at this, the landmarks, you got the town center, the School of Cavalry, and the Guildhorn all close to each other. And that's just an absolute beauty for kauP. If he can reach those, he can just knock his opponent out of this game. Now, one thing that Don Artie can do to actually stop that is age up to Imperial Age in the middle with either of the landmarks. Because if he does that, then his opponent won't be able to destroy all landmarks. Right now, he's got 3 landmarks. But if he goes up to Imperial, he would have a 4th one. And if that's very far away from the others, it's gonna be impossible for kauP to snipe it. 2.5 minutes remaining, and indeed he's building the Red Palace with 35 villagers in the middle. That's the appropriate reaction. The question is, will that go up before these landmarks are taken down? Because you see the villagers haven't started making it just yet. They're rushing it down as we speak. 35 villagers on it. It's at a 1500 HP. The bombards are just now closing the distance, and the lancers are also jumping on top of those landmarks. Oh, this is gonna be close. This is gonna be really close. The bombards are opening up on the town center. The guild hall is also under attack. The town center is about to go down. The guild hall is still intact though, and the School of Cavalry also intact. Imperial Age is in for Don Artie, and that's going to mean that it's impossible for kauP to snipe the landmarks. He's got an absolute juggernaut economy compared to his opponent, but he wasn't able to snipe the landmarks in time, and now you see, despite the fact that all of these landmarks are now destroyed, it's still game on for Don Artie. He's rushing up multiple stone walls on this side. Simultaneously, though, Don Artie has pulled all his siege towards the middle, so there's a chance to break through the right side and just neutralize the sacred site over here. Because all you have to do is just neutralize it, and then the counter resets. I think that if kauP is able to stop that sacred countdown, he would have the game. But that countdown is getting dangerously close to completion. It is only 1.5 minutes remaining, you know. The target is 2950 or so. Bombards bashing their way through the stone walls over here. And on the right side, you see the lancers are approaching, but there's a bit of a problem. You have to get through these walls. It looks like the mangonels opened up on the lancers on the left side. Quite a few dead bodies out there. Mangonels once again just raining down death and destruction. You just can't fight this over here. There's no way that you're gonna kill those mangonels, so your only hope is breaking through the right side. Funnily enough, losing all those lancers over here helped for kauP because he was housed, or pop-capped. And because he was pop-capped, he wasn't able to get bombards on the right side. Now that he lost some units on the left, he can get some bombards in, and he's about to break through these walls. There is about 30 seconds remaining on that sacred site countdown, and you're gonna have to contest this sacred site. That's all you gotta do. Villagers nearby as well, as you got some mangonels going. The mangonels are opening up on the lancers. The walls are being broken through, and the knights of kauP are moving in. Inside the circle are the units of Don Artie as well, and as you see, the game is over. The game is over. It was something like 29:40 instead of 50. I didn't see the exact starting time, so you could ask what exactly happened, because kauP ran into the sacred site. So The idea and the way it works is that you have to have the sacred site contested in order to stop the countdown, or at least pause it. Because if there are units that are contesting the sacred site, the countdown is going to pause. So the idea here for kauP is that he was trying to run into that sacred site a couple of seconds before completion and contest it. However, the sacred site has to be contested, and what it means is that someone already started decapping it. That has to be kauP, and then blue units move in and stop the decapping process. And in that case, you have a sacred site that is not 100% controlled by Artie, but it's also not being decapped. But in this case, because Artie had units inside the sacred site, the decapping didn't even start. So basically, for Artie, all he had to do is just keep units inside that sacred site before the enemy goes in. If kauP had a Lancer go into the influence radius of that sacred site before Artie has a single unit in there, he would have started decapping, and in that case, all Artie can do is send his units in. That will make the sacred site contested, and that's going to pause the countdown. But because Artie had his units inside before the Knights of kauP arrived, the sacred site never started to be decapped, and as such, it doesn't classify as contested simply because it's 100% controlled by Artie. Hopefully this explanation actually made sense. I also had to think this over because this is not something that you commonly see over here. kauP, in the end, 114 kills, 185 losses, 92 kills for Artie against 49 losses. Massive eco lead for kauP, as you see, 33,000 food gathered, 36,000 gold gathered, as compared to Artie having just 10,000 food, 14,000 gold. But the big thing is map control, and the big thing is this efficiency for Artie. Like, he was going full siege, and it was just very difficult for kauP to ever get an angle on those mangonels, and the mangonels just kept him out of those central sacred sites. As you see, the eco was there for kauP, but this type of massacre is what he really struggled with. Those mangonels can just wipe out armies in 5 seconds. 11 mangonels are no joke, because, I mean, even a cavalry charge, those mangonels pack a punch and they can just kill grouped up units so easily. And when you have narrow openings in stone walls like that, crossing those with any kind of unit when there is like 8-9 mangonels firing upon you is just next to impossible.